Welcome back. We continue with the developing story this afternoon. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula elected the 6th Speaker of Parliament. Let's take you straight to Parliament, where we find our reporter Lindsay Dentlinger. Lindsay, 199 members of Parliament voting in support of that ANC nomination. And Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula feeling emotional, but also promising that she will, in fact, make the transition and respect the integrity of the House.
She has indeed made that promise, Clement, despite herself facing an investigation here in Parliament that concerns her own integrity in this House. And I think very telling this afternoon are those 17 spoilt ballots in this vote. But I'm going to get straight to it with the IFP's Chief Whip, Naren Singh. Mr. Singh, thank you. Good afternoon. Does the IFP stand on Ms. Mapisa-Nqakula being elected the 6th Speaker of the National Assembly?
Well, we indicated even before the vote that we were not comfortable with the nomination of former Minister Nqakula. And I'll leave it at that for now, because the House has spoken and we have to recognize and respect the democratic process of the House. We just hope that the Speaker, the new Speaker now, will act with the kind of integrity she spoke about, and that we will also give her our fullest cooperation as a political party, because we are here to ensure that Parliament functions as a respectable institution in the country, and also that parliamentarians do their job of ensuring that we represent adequately the millions of people out there who are in dire need, poverty, inequality, unemployment, and this is our responsibility. Stop corruption, and the Speaker must lead from the front in that regard.
She has made a pledge to work closer with opposition parties. She said smart parties, big and small. Ostensibly, she's including your party among those. What are the key issues you want to put on the table for her to address as soon as she takes office?
I think the key issues will be the way Parliament functions. We've been critical of the way Parliament functions and the fact that the majority party seems to have their way on every issue. And even when smaller parties make sensible inputs in committees and elsewhere, they're often ignored because the ruling party overrides that. And one of the things we suggested is when it comes to portfolio committee chairpersons, perhaps it's not only SCOPA that should have an opposition chairperson, but other parties also should have chairpersons, because it gives us a sense of, impartiality, more accountability, as we can see in SCOPA. And this is something that we need to look at. We need to also look at more public participation in whatever we do. Sometimes you get legislation that comes through the Parliament that's hardly been consulted with the general public out there. We need to hear people more than anything else, and we need to deal with people's queries instead of just going through the motions here of statements and whatever else that we do here.
We can't ignore the fact that the newly elected Speaker is facing an investigation in Parliament related to her tenure as the Defence Minister. How will your party be treating that? We don't know what that report might find, but it is going to land on, on the table here before her in this House. How's the party going to respond to that?
Well, being elected the Speaker does not mean that if there's any investigations against you, that should stop, because there are other bodies dealing with that investigation, and we hope that she herself will cooperate in these investigations when they are conducted in a manner, and not using the hat of a Speaker, but cooperating in a manner that would require the South African public to know exactly what happened or did not happen.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Naren Singh of the IFP. Clement calling for the Speaker also to consider smaller parties, perhaps to chair other committees here in Parliament. We know the IFP holds the chair of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts, but I'm going to just ask Mr. Groenewald, Mr. Peter Groenewald of the Freedom Front Plus, on his views the election of the Speaker this afternoon. Mr. Groenewald, thank you for your time. Already some concerns expressed by opposition parties with regards to Ms. Mapisa-Nqakula becoming the next Speaker. What's your party's view?
Well, we from the start opposed the nomination, and in her speech now she just referred to say that we must protect the integrity of the House. The irony is that she, by sitting in that chair, is violating the integrity of the House, because when she was the minister, she misused the position by taking members of the Executive Council from the ANC to Zimbabwe on taxpayers' money and the military plane. So I didn't hear anything of I will be impartial. I will protect the rights of all political parties because I am the Speaker now. That's what I wanted to hear. But I think it sums it quite well. When she was nominated and the Judge President was asked whether she accepts the nomination, not far from my side sits the Minister of Police, and he said, with an interjection, she has no option. So it is quite clear. She had no option. She's a nominee from the faction within the ANC. And therefore, it is a pity that we have a government that does not act in the best interest of South Africa, but in the best interest of the ANC. There are other better candidates. Even if we talk about a woman, then I would have preferred Toko Dadisa. She's got the gravitas, she's got the authority, she's got the experience. So I am not satisfied. The Freedom Front Plus will, of course, try our best and ensure that we protect the quorum of the House and the integrity of the House. But unfortunately, she also at one stage said a couple of times order. If that is the way she thinks she's going to restore order in the House, it is going to be chaos.
Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Peter Groenewald of the Freedom Front Plus, also not happy with this election this afternoon and the appointment of Ms. Mapisa-Nqakula as the new Speaker of the National Assembly.
So, Lindsay, you indicated earlier that the 17 spoiled votes probably tell a story there. 298 votes in total, 199 for Nosiviwe, 82 for the DA's nominee, Annelie Lotriet, and the 17 spoiled votes. What does that tell us?
Well, we'd have to crunch the numbers a little finer, Clement, to know exactly how many members of each party was present in the House today. We don't have that breakdown. We know the EFF was not here at all, and no votes could be cast remotely because this was a secret ballot, and all 298 people who cast votes had to be in the House today. But it is probably telling that maybe not everybody in the ANC caucus did vote for Mapisa-Nqakula today, although she did get resounding applause from particularly the women in the caucus, saying that today's election was a boon for women empowerment. The new Speaker herself saying that it was telling that 5 out of the 6 speakers since the Democratic South Africa have all been women. But it would appear that maybe not everybody from her party was satisfied to toe the line and to vote for her as the next Speaker.
Yeah. Any thoughts on what Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula had to say, Lindsay? He is extending the hand of cooperation to, and feel free, Lindsay, if you see some of the opposition parties coming through, if you want to chat to them, just indicate to me. But any reflections on what she said, extending that hand of cooperation, making the pledges that she is, in fact, her allegiance is to South Africans. She's going to respect the Constitution, ensure that she works well with different political parties, and even respect that integrity of Parliament.
She also made the point, Clement, that during this pandemic, and we've seen the way Parliament has to alter their way that they work, that she said they needed to strengthen parliamentary processes, particularly to enhance oversight and accountability. And Clement, you will know that those are two factors that this Parliament has been criticised about time and time again, also be for the Zondo Commission of Inquiry for being slow to act or not to act at all. And so, as you've heard from the opposition parties that I have spoken to earlier, when indeed the House does have to consider possible adverse findings against the Speaker during her tenure as the Defence Minister, that she too will toe the line and that she will uphold the integrity, accountability and oversight of this House to investigate those allegations that have been levelled against her during her tenure as the Defence Minister. She has pledged cooperation with opposition parties to work closer together. She said particularly issues mutual issues that they share that are in the public interest and in the national interest, that she has pledged to work closer with opposition parties, and certainly those that I've spoken to here this afternoon also indicating that they want to give her that opportunity, even if they don't agree that she's the person most fit for That's now a fait accompli that she is the next speaker, and so they will have to work around that and see how they can cooperate better with her.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if, in fact, she makes that transition, because she says she recognizes that she will have to make the transition to personally make sure that she fulfills the obligation of Parliament. Lastly, Lindsay, do we normally know how Parliament deals with issues of conflict of interest? You've indicated an investigation that is underway already. We know that there is a parliamentary process to look at how law enforcement agencies responded to the recent unrest. At some point, Parliament will be dealing with issues that involved her as Defence Minister. In that case, what happens? Does the Deputy Speaker then take over and preside over the sitting?
Clement, I'm going to let the Chief Whip of the DA answer your question because she's just sidled up alongside me. Natasha Mazzoni, thank you for coming back to us again. Clement Manyetela asking me now whether issues of conflict of interest that involve the Defence Minister, not only personal allegations against her, but of course in dealing with the recent unrest, how the Defence Ministry acted on intelligence during that time. How do you, as your party, want to see how she's going to deal with matters that could be seen as a conflict of interest when they arrive in the House?
Well, there definitely will be conflicts of interest. That's a given. I mean, it's not if they are conflicts, they are conflicts of interest. So I foresee it playing out like this. I foresee her either having to take special leave or being suspended by Parliament while she's investigated, and the Deputy Speaker having to become the acting Speaker as he's been for the last couple of weeks. What you're seeing here is a clear ANC factional battle being played out at the expense of Parliament, and you're going to see chaos in the House, which is exactly what this factional battle wants, because the more factional battles, the more chaos there is in the House, the less we are able to hold ministers to account. And that is exactly what Judge Zondo said the problem was, is that we weren't, as Parliament, holding the executive to account. So we've already seen the chaos that and the disruptions that happen in Parliament, and the sort of lack of desirability to hold people to account. Now imagine if the very head of discipline in the House is questionable in her integrity personally and in her office. She was removed as the Minister of Defence because of bad service, and she gets rewarded by being made the Speaker of the House. This is unimaginable, and anywhere else in the world it would be unthinkable. In fact, anywhere else in the world this person would have resigned or would have been fired, quite correctly so, as a Minister of Defence, overseeing what we need to just refer to as an attempted failed coup. I mean, it's unbelievable to think that this person now oversees my decorum in the House, my discipline in the House, and this is someone that I should look up to and respect and hope holds the dignitas of the House when she hasn't been able to hold the dignitas of the country together. And I think President Cyril Ramaphosa should be very, very worried, because there's clearly a faction that wants chaos in this House so that ministers cannot be held to account.
Natasha, what do you make of those 17 spoilt ballots this afternoon?
I think 17 people maybe felt a bit guilty. Interestingly enough, a few people walked past us just now and you heard me shout out by 15 and 16. They weren't that shy in the House to say who they were. I think that there's a lot of people who weren't here in the House today. But let's not forget, this is also a woman who, in her opening speech to Parliament today, thanked President Jacob Zuma. I mean, if you've ever needed to know that there's a problem at hand, is when a speaker thanks President Jacob Zuma, ex-President Jacob Zuma. And 17 people had the guts to maybe not transition yet to a Democratic Alliance speaker, but at least spoil their ballot to say that they do not agree with this decision that the ANC cadre deployment policy has come up with. But what really frustrates me is that we sit there with people that we think are good, upstanding citizens who stood up and cheered for a minister who we know has questionable ethics, questionable morals, and will surely not be able to hold the dignity of this House together.
Just lastly, Natasha, let's just look a little bit maybe on the positive side. The new speakers pledging to work better, closer with opposition parties. You as the main opposition in this House, what issues will you be laying on the table you want her to address? She's particularly mentioned working together, collaborating, especially on matters of public interest, national importance, and I'm sure you will agree there are those matters that cross both sides of the House that you can agree on?
Absolutely. The very first thing I'd like her to do is I'd like her to look at the DA's bill, which would outlaw cadre deployment of the ANC and outlaw their cadre deployment policy. And if she truly is a neutral speaker, she will allow for those committees to start discussing that particular bill. And also, if she is holding out her hand and holding out the so-called olive leaf and promising us to be a neutral speaker, she will certainly not stand in the way of the investigation into the KZN and the Gauteng violence and insurgents that broke out.
Thank you very much for your time. Natasha Mazone, the Chief Whip of the DA, very strong views there that she does not feel Mapisa-Nqakula is a woman of integrity to hold on to this job and to be an impartial speaker in the National Assembly.
Lindsay Dentlinger, thank you so much for bringing us reaction from opposition parties in Parliament to Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula having been named the 6th Speaker of the National Assembly.